Don't miss the joy and power and potential in this short human life of the doorway to bliss, which is somehow fused and unified with our own awakening, and again leads us to compassion and love.
When you get to the point where you can share anything, that's when you can feel that expansion of love that becomes exponential.
Over again, no matter how much it hurt.
Over and over again, no matter how much it hurts.
You know, for me, all of the pain of 1,000 deaths is worth, right? This expression of love.
So you hear that, listeners? Blindfolds, feathers. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Integral Life's Evolving Spirit. Really glad you're here. Just taking a breath to everyone, just take a breath into this moment with me, rolling out the red carpet between our hearts to each other. It always feels good to land there. And, you know, really feeling and calling you in if you're listening to this in the future, that we see you and also welcome you to this space. I'm super excited today to talk about love and love through the stages of development, which is part of Ken Wilber's, one aspect of his meta theory, right, of the 4 quadrants, the 8 zones. A big part of that meaning making is around how our identity, our ego, grows through different tones, different sounds of meaning making, different frames. And what we find in our data, in the research, is different languages and words about our reality and how we see ourselves. It's cool. This field is called constructive developmental psychology in Achiever language, 3.5 language. It's something that is very validated in the academies, in the educational fields, in the psychological fields. And what we see is if we take this frame of development, the idea that our ego, our identity in this case, changes and grows in language, evolves, right? Very much not from bottom to top, but like a balloon. Our identity, our complexity, our meaning making just changes languages. And each one of these stages is like a tone. And together, when we tone together, not apart, we create an incredible harmony, both inside and all of these stages that we still hold inside of us. Just ask my husband. He got to see not so long ago my 16-year-old stamping around about we hold these parts and these pieces and these stages of our development inside of us, inside and out in our world, which are echoes of each other, are reflections of each other. So as I always want to say, go through the stages of meaning making, let us remember we are all of them and not have attitude about our altitude, okay? So we are all of it, and our job is to make it healthy. So today we are going to focus our talk about the stages of development and have a conversation around love, particularly romantic love, because it's Valentine's Day, the day we're recording this anyway. And let's offer this as a prayer for healthy love at all the stages, even as we begin to talk about it. So one thing we see in the data is I invite you all right now together to remember the first time that you fell in love. Maybe it was with a boy, maybe it was with a girl. Maybe it was with something else, another living being of some sort. But can you feel into this feeling? Go back and remember. Remember that bliss and bring it back. And how old were you about? Whatever it was, it's awesome. Romantic love, the way we think about it now, like the desire to be with another and pair up, may start as crushes when we're little or in high school. Usually those are very, there isn't sexual desire necessarily expressed in those languages. Like this is arising from, you might have had a totally different experience. There might be exploration of the body. I explored with my little girl best friend when I was 4. We explored our body. But love is something that's concrete. It's something you feel in the body. It's something that you first think of as hugs and the oxytocin and chemicals that are released. Now, understanding, also qualifying that ultimate love is the background of all of this. It's where we begin, we had before we were born, this transcendent love, which is unitive, right? It is pre-personal, it is pre-ego. It's before we even have an idea of the self. So understanding that background's everything. Our love starts off as something we feel and we touch and we explore. As we start to understand society and wanting to find our place in it as young people, elementary school, high school, we might start to have a first love, a physical love that perhaps we have sex with for the first time, or we marry, or somebody that we feel that deep love with, and it might come and it might go, because at this stage we equate love primarily with the physical body, with lust, and I'm saying that in a good way, not a bad way. And that sort of thing can come and go. As we grow into what we call 2.5, later second person perspective, traditionalists, we think of it, love becomes an institution, someone, a marriage. We follow the rules and the norms, and it's what we might call conventional. And I don't mean that in negative connotations, okay? And growing through this, and our conventions might be not to be married, right? We have certain images of how we want, and we see relationships very much based on the training and experiences and exposure and interjects we've had up to then. But something happens developmentally when our ego and our identity grows beyond a conventional idea of, your idea of relationship is what others tell you it should be, the church tells you it should be, your parents tell you it should be. And it grows into this awakening of what we call the subtle realm or the subtle self, third person perspective, early orange, okay? Those who think of the colors, early orange. And what happens when our identity, our concept grows to the subtle self is we start to realize we are an individual outside of the conventions of society, of God and country and church and expectations, whatever they are. We are our own person and we can create our own destiny. And this is the birth of modernism. Relationships here at 3.0, in the third person perspective, tend to focus on if it helps me reach my goals and it helps me figure out who I am in the basis of deep love. Love is there deeply, and it supports maybe I've had children, maybe I've built a home. If it supports my concrete family needs, what individually or otherwise, then I see relationship as something that is going to help me get my goals. And this matures into late orange, late modernism, where these are what we call our sort of achiever aspects. And these, again, are not bad things. We want healthy expressions of this. This is where, when we're growing our own individual self in modernism through orange, we're looking in the mirror and figuring out, who am I? And who am I outside of home, outside of all these things? Who am I going to be? What's going to be often my career, my art, my mission, it could be parenting, it could be graduate school, it could be entrepreneurship, it could be being an artist, it could be being a Dharma bum. A Dharma bum could be an achiever if they're getting really good at being a Dharma bum. It's this, who am I going to be? And we want this to be healthy. Here we see in relationships in the data a lot of parallel play. You're together, it's like divide and conquer. And I have this in my relationship as part of my relationship, and I want it to be healthy. We have a 13-year-old, my husband and I, right? We have things to do and children to raise and, entrepreneur companies to run. And this is what you see often. If your relationship helps you reach your goals and you're mutually supporting each other, you can each do your own thing often. And that's fine. And that's good, right? You can really reach your goals at this stage. As relationships then continue to change and we grow into our lovely green that we love so much, inside and out, our postmodernism, where finally we want it's the birth of what we call the subtle collective. It's where being seen and understood and communicating with each other and looking in someone's eyes and having them see you back and having that be really important, connecting at the heart, understanding other people's hearts. These are all the beauties of green and of fourth person perspective, really being able to take that, forefronting the collective is more important than the individual. One thing I'll say we often see in third person perspective, this comes up again and again in the data when the research we're doing is in, just to back up from an in third person perspective, often there will be affairs. This come up a lot, and everyone feels really bad about it later. But often there are affairs because we forefront our individual needs as important, and they are. Like we've got to find our own destiny, feel. And later in fourth person perspective, we again forefront. It doesn't mean individual needs aren't important, but we forefront the collective. But this time it's a subtle collective. We start to be able to see all of our parts and pieces and voices inside and take responsibility for what we're seeing and want to know what the other person is doing and, start to go to therapy and how can we connect and see it? It's a beautiful thing. And how can we do it in community? How can we do it in nature? How can we often do it with, maybe psychedelics and, really that becomes the most important thing together. And it's a wonderful thing. Very helpful at this stage of relationships that we have community, others as well in our community that are vibing and seeing me see you and understanding each other in a very subtle way, while also as we mature in fourth person perspective into what we would call teal or strategist. This is still fourth person perspective in the O'Fallon data. We start to really look at our own inner parts and pieces. A mature internal family system, we're able to cultivate an unconditional loving witness. Later, the thing about teal, why it's often called the strategist, is we have the capacity to zoom out, not only on systems, but our own internal systems, our own, I've got a mind, a voice, a being, parts that are creating what I call me, and they're different voices, and sometimes they're in conflict, and sometimes they're shadow, and it's a focus on development and a focus on shadow. Really comes up in teal because we are motivated now in late fourth person perspective in our relationship. We can see farther. Time has expanded. Time and space change meaning as we go through these stages. And so time has expanded. We're able to see deeply into our own generations and generational trauma. The study of epigenetics becomes very fascinating. We can also see farther into the future for the first time and see patterns. And the work of shadow becomes something that we have a deep responsibility for future generations and even healing past generations, which is maybe something we see later. That we can bend time and space to do healing. And this all, then what role does your relationship take? So before I go into the latest stages of relationship, we're going to save that for the end and maybe even lay some secret Vajrayana stuff on you if it flows. I want to introduce my guests today. So welcome, Dr. Dan and Dr. Micra. So glad that you're with me. I'm going to tell these wonderful people all the cool stuff that you've done. So Dr. Dan is a former surgeon, still a doctor, like hardcore trained, has been on all the certified boards, is taught at the fancy Ivy League schools, is extremely well known in his field of epigenetics, holistic well-being, human performance, an extraordinary focus on epigenetics, AI, and how all of this comes together. Dr. Dan shows us the capacity of how we can bring parasystematic approaches to healing and well-being. which is something we also see in the later stages, is the ability to not just meld different disciplines, but whole different systems together into a new becoming. And then there's Dr. Micra, who is retired. I still think of you as this warrior, but full bird colonel in the Air Force for 20 years. Total, like, love warrior badass. She also focuses on human performance. These two are, long-term partners and have also created a company together, Apparent Zoe. Am I saying that right, doctors? Yeah. Zoe, which is extraordinary. Human Performance Center down in Austin and all over the world. The thing about Dr. Micra I adore so much is she integrates this deep science of using breath work, like psycho-audio work, deeply trained, data-driven, which is a good thing. We want healthy tones all around, but merges this with these spiritual practices from the indigenous traditions and holds also that seat of the mystic and the Dakini in that space. So again, what healing of the feminine divine wisdom, which is part of our human tradition, part of our lineage. And these indigenous lineages hold this for us. With healthy orange, right? Data as well. And bringing epigenetics with spirituality together is really fascinating. So thanks for coming on and joining me today, you two.
Our pleasure. Yeah, grateful to be here.
Yeah, really fun.